Welcome to Please Don't Fail Me Now podcasts, where the grades are sweet and the stress levels are off the charts. My name is Trevor Stevenson, and I will be discussing the Scarlet Pimpernel with you today. Hold on to your heads, because it's cutting time. As we jump right into the book, we tend to notice one of the most influential characters is Mrs. Blakeney, or Margaret. She is one of the main characters because she is extremely knowledgeable. In my opinion, what makes her so unique is her husband is British while she is from France. Now this means that she has all kinds of knowledge throughout the story and culture that others may not. And it is interesting too to see how she's from a culture that helped slaughter thousands. Later on in the story, it becomes apparent that her husband is also the Scarlet Pimpernel, which further leads to why she's in unique turmoil. If someone else had been the Scarlet Pimpernel, then it would have been easier to betray them to save her brother, because that was one of the points in the book. But it was this tension in the story of, should I choose my husband's life or my brother's life, that made the reader become more involved and wondered what she may choose. Another interesting thing about her personality is throughout the entire story, you are seeing this chain of events happen about her love for Sir Percy. For example, in the beginning, she resents him because he used to, show her love and affection. About a week after their marriage, he started to act like a blubbering idiot like he does with everybody else, except in not loving. Excerpt from the story gives a great example showing how kind of nonchalant he is about everything. It says, and Marguerite is starting, "Will you not defend your wife's honor?" And Sir Percy says, "Old fish, Medea, would you have me challenge the poor countess to a duel?" During this time, he's kind of just backing off and being lazy about it and oh yeah, whatever, he's just talking trash and he's being laid back, and that's not what you do when you're in love. But later in the story, we find that she notices the actual reason why Percy has distanced himself from her, and she tries to find a way to get that love back from him, no matter the cost. Then we see her go through immeasurable lengths to save him, once they realize that one of the missions he was going on was a trap, and he was going to be killed. Once she tries to save him, she finds that he loves her just as much as she loves him, which is a lot, because in the book it actually talks about how he kissed the ground where she stood, and not oh, this is nice, he legitimately kissed the ground. So that was interesting. Some of the lines they would say about their love would be, and Sir Percy is starting this, "The only power that I can see at present, mademoiselle, is the power of your beauty." And Marguerite says, "Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, Sir Percy." And he says, "The beholder is enchanted." Well, this beholder. I think the language spoken during this point of the book is truly wonderful. People don't speak like that anymore. And honestly, throughout the book, we can tell that they are speaking in a way that you wouldn't normally see in any other circumstance. I learned that this book has wonderful look into the world of France during the time of the French Revolution, and how nobody really knew if you were ever safe, even in different countries. I thought it was exciting to see not only the culture from one country, France, but also from England, and as the Scarlet Pimpernel is from England. I also thought it was interesting, as previously stated, to see the language used when the author when an author uses a more formal kind of language, or dirty language, when it comes to the slums and places where they boarded on into France and got into the country. It gives you a perspective of what time period this is in, and how eloquent, or ugly depending on the circumstances, speech could get sometimes. Finally, one of the coolest things I learned about this whole experience is that people during this time were very secretive. If you share the wrong information, it could very well be your head on the guillotine, and you would not really want that. In fact, being a spy during this time, while exciting, could get you killed off the faster, no matter whose side you were on. Heck, people often throw their neighbors to the guillotine just because they didn't like them. And I'm not saying that's cool, because I said that at the beginning, but I thought it was fascinating that people would just end their neighbors if they didn't like them. I would also like to compare and contrast the difference between the Scarlet Pimpernel musical and the Scarlet Pimpernel book. When we first take a look at the Scarlet Pimpernel musical, we notice right off the bat who the Scarlet Pimpernel is. But in the book, they don't tell you until about halfway, which kind of leaves you guessing and like, who could it be? And why haven't they told me yet? I think another key feature of the Scarlet Pimpernel musical is that it kind of follows Percy throughout his adventures, and it gives the story from his perspective instead of from, whereas in the book, it talks about it from Marguerite's perspective and how she discovered who the Scarlet Pimpernel was and how she felt this sadness during that time of not knowing what was happening or if her husband was safe. And I think it's fascinating, too, how much more detail the book had in the musical. Well, than the musical. Because in the book, it has more scenes. It talks about things in more detail, and it kind of gives you a more descriptive feel. Whereas in the musical, you're rushing along to get to different songs. You're trying to get that perspective in while also not crowding the stage. I think it's fascinating to see the differences between the two and how, musically speaking, there's different scenes that you can take out that aren't necessarily as important that you can replace, and it still makes the story flow and be similar to the book. Now, obviously, there's definite differences, like in the book, Chauvelin gets away, and in the musical, he goes to the guillotine because he's framed. But I think it's fascinating to see how it makes those differences. In conclusion, I thought this book was fascinating, and I really hope you enjoyed my podcast. I hope you have a great day, and don't get your head chopped off.